SolidWorks and Creo Parametric have large assembly management tools because often you want to work on large assemblies and you want to improve the performance of your computer. In SolidWorks, the primary large assembly management tool is called a Speedpak, and in Creo Parametric, it is a simplified representation. Let's take a look at how to use Speedpaks in SolidWorks. Here I have an assembly open. It takes a few seconds to load because it's got so many components and some complex geometry. So to improve the performance, you can use Speedpaks for the different subassemblies. To start off with, I'm going to take one of the components and I'm going to hide it just because it blocks a lot of the other different components. Let's go to one of the subassemblies in here. If I right click on it, from the pop-up menu, you have a command for Speedpak options, and it gives you two different ways to create a Speedpak. You can do a mated Speedpak or a graphics Speedpak. Let's take a look at a mated Speedpak first. When I click on that, the image of the model changed slightly in the graphics area. Let me hover my mouse over the model. You'll notice we're getting some ghosting, and now only a few surfaces are visible and selectable. And as I move my mouse over, the ghosted graphics brings back the image of the rest of the subassembly. I've got some other surfaces and entities that I can select, but again, we get those ghosted graphics because essentially you have a nice picture of the subassembly, but only the references that were used for creating various different mates inside of this assembly. If you take a look at the icon in the model tree, it has also changed to indicate that we are using what is known as that Speedpak. Let me bring back this big assembly. Let's show the components. I'm going to deselect it for a moment, and I'm going to create a Speedpak for this big subassembly. I'm going to right-click on it and then choose Speedpak options, and this time I will use the other option. Let's create a graphics Speedpak, and so now it is selecting a bunch of different surfaces. Don't worry about that, something about some kind of feature missing references. Now I'm going to move my mouse over the model, and you'll notice that we can see the different sub-assemblies that were underneath the big assembly. But since we're just using the graphics Speedpak, we are getting the rest of the geometry from that big sub-assembly ghosted. Let's go back. I'm going to right click, and then I'm going to say that for the Speedpak options, since I've created the Speedpak and applied it, if I want to get back to having all the geometry, let's set the Speedpak to the parent, and the icon changed, and you can see now I can select stuff as normal. Let's do that for this other subassembly as well. Speedpak options. Let's set the Speedpak to the parent, and now I'm going to take a look at creating a Speedpak manually. So again, you can use the mated method, you could use the graphics method, or you can do it manually. Let's go to our configuration manager. We can see a few different configurations for this assembly. I'm going to go to the default one, which is active, and when I right click on it, here from the menu we can add a Speedpak, and now we have the dialog box that allows us to specify what faces that we want to include, what bodies that we want to include, and reference geometry such as different planes. We can also include sketches and curves, and if you include sketches and curves or reference geometry that has dimensions, you'll be able to access those different dimensions. So for example, for faces to include, I can say, hey, I definitely need this surface for what I'm working on, I need this surface, and I need this surface, and I need this surface. You can see them being collected inside of there. And then let's click in the collector for the bodies to include. And I can say, hey, I need all of this, and I need all of this as well. And hey, let's grab that one too. So that way we have a number of different bodies. I'm not going to select any reference geometry. Be aware that there's also something called a geometry quick include, where you can grab the exterior bodies only, and this is the button that enables the quick include. And when you enable the quick include, you have a slider that allows you to adjust the quality of the selection for the quick include. There are a couple other options that we have down here. For example, we can remove those ghost graphics so you don't have that kind of effect when your cursor moves over the model. And here you have the ability to add the rebuild on save mark. All right, let's hit the check mark to complete this Speedpak. And it did its calculations. Let me go back to the Feature Manager design tree. And here you can see, as I hover over the mouse, the effect of having the ghosted graphics because we have the Speedpak applied. Also, if you take a look at the list of features and components, well, we just see our planes in here and the origin, but we don't see all the different components because we have the Speedpak applied. Let's go back to our configuration manager and let's double click on the default configuration. Now I'm going to go back to the feature manager design tree and we've got all our other different objects back. And I want to show you something about updating. So for example, if I go to one of the subassemblies, I happen to know that there's an object in here that I can open up. And when I open it and then go to the configuration manager, in this particular situation, the Speedpak is out of date. So when your Speedpaks are out of date, you need to update them manually. I can right click on it and choose Update Speedpak. Also, there is an Update Speedpak command available from the Assembly tab. Let's click Yes to update the Speedpak. I got some warning in there, but that's fine. Let's go back to our other window. Let's take a look at a couple of the different options that you have available. If I go to the Options command inside of here, we can then choose from the list Assemblies, and we have the option for Update Out-of-Date Speedpak configurations when saving files. That is right now set to none. You can change it to all, or you can change it to the ones that have that rebuild on save mark option that we saw earlier. And another option that you have, if I go to the display command, we have one that is currently grayed out for displaying the Speedpak graphic circle. So those are a couple things to be aware of. I'm going to cancel out of here. And another thing, let me go to Open, and I'm going to just select one random assembly over here. When you do a retrieval, you do have the option to retrieve using those Speedpaks in order to improve performance. Let's cancel out of there. So that is the gist of Speedpaks in SolidWorks. Let's now take a look at simplified representations in Creo Parametric. In Creo Parametric, simplified representations are your primary large assembly management tool. Every model, every part and assembly automatically comes with a couple different predefined simplified representations. Let me start off by selecting a part and then clicking on the Open button. And let's take a look at its simplified reps. To access them, you will go to the View Manager, and you can see that on the Simplified Rep tab, we have the Master Rep and the Automatic Rep. The Master Rep is all the data available in this particular component. You have your wireframe edges, you have your surfaces, you have your solids, plus all the parametric information, all the feature information that defines the geometry in this particular part. In addition to that, you have the Automatic Rep. And when I double click on the Automatic Rep, nothing graphically changed on the screen. The Automatic Rep is the same lightweight visual representation that you get when you publish your model to a PVZ or PVS format for viewing in CreoView, the lightweight viewer. The automatic rep is a lot lighter, so it is going to be a lot faster when you use it in your computer. Besides these two predefined reps, in Creo 3 and earlier, you had some other different representations available to you. I'm going to show them to you real quick. Let's go to File, Options, and then I'm going to click on the Configuration Editor and then use the Find button. I'm going to search for an option that starts with the word hide. It is called Hide Pre-Creo 4 Reps. The default value is Maintain Master, but I'm going to change this to No to bring back those old pre-Creo 4 representations. I'm not going to save that option in my config file. Let's now go back to the View Manager, and you'll see that we have a few other additional choices in here. The graphics rep is just going to have your wireframe edges, but you're still going to see your surfaces. So it's going to look just like you had the entire model in here. If you go to the geometry rep, this will have your edges, your surfaces, and the interior volume. So you can use the geometry rep for things like doing your mass properties or interference checks, but it's not going to have any of the parametric information for the features like you have in the master representation. Another one of the pre-Creo 4.0 representations is the symbolic rep, and here you see a bounding box for the maximum dimensions of the component plus a point located at the origin of that part. Let's go back to the master rep. I'm going to close the View Manager. Let me change that option, turn it back to its original default value. Here we have Hide Pre-Creo 4 Reps. Let's change this back to Maintain Master and then click OK. And now let's go back to the assembly window. And so here in the assembly, when I go to the View Manager, you're going to have your master representation and the automatic rep. And there are a couple other ones in here like the default rep and the default envelope rep that we're not going to go into. But where you're going to get the most advantage when you're performing design work in Creo is when you create your own custom representations that control which components you are including and excluding, and which ones are in the master representation and which ones are in the automatic representation. So for example, let's say for some of the work that I'm doing, I only need the exterior components. Here we have a custom defined rep called exterior, and then here's another one that someone created called no housing, and here's another one that someone created for the shifter. And so these are some different custom representations that someone created. Let me go back to the master representation. If I want to create my own custom representation, I can click on the New button, and you can give it whatever name that you want. I'm going to hit the Enter key to accept the default name, and here we can see that we have all the different components listed in here, and by default they are all excluded. It's not going to have any of these different components in the representation. You can change the default rule for the assembly, and let's say that I want all these components to be in the automatic representation by default. So that'll be the lightweight representation of all the different components. And then I can pick a variety of different components and say, hey, I want to exclude this one over here, and let's select this one as well, and I will exclude it. And so you can custom tailor it based on the different design tasks that you're working on. And you can use the little window over here to figure out which different components that you want to apply different actions to. And I can say, hey, let's get rid of this one as well. And let me also grab a few of the different assemblies in here. And right now it says derived, which means that it's using the default rule of the assembly. But let's change this one to exclude. And let's also grab one other assembly over here and exclude it as well. And I can say, hey, let's also grab this component. I don't want this one. Let's exclude it. And you'll also notice that there are some other different actions that you have in here. And these were used a lot in earlier versions of Pro Engineer. They're not really used that much today. You can substitute a component, whether it's an assembly or a part model, with an envelope component or a family table or a member of an interchange. And you can also substitute it with a simplified rep defined at a lower level. So for example, it looks like someone has a simplified rep with a misspelling of pinion bearings. Let's click the OK button. And so that way we're using the custom simplified rep from a subassembly here at a higher level assembly. And now that I've applied all these different actions, I can click the Open button and the representation updates on the screen. So simplified reps are great for managing large assemblies to improve the performance of your computer, but also to tailor your assemblies to the amount of detail that you need for the design work that you are performing. Now, most of these components here are in the automatic representation, which means that we just have the lightweight graphical representations without the parametric information. Let's say I wanted to make changes to a particular feature. Well, right now that information isn't in the computer session, but we're working in something called on-demand mode. On-demand means that when you're trying to perform an action that requires the master representation, then Creo Parametric in the background will automatically retrieve the master representation so you can perform actions like editing different dimensional values or editing the definition of various different features or the placement of a component. Let's go to our options again, File, Options, and then go to the Assembly category. In here, if I click on the On-Demand Settings button, this will open up a dialog box that allows you to control the settings for retrieving components on demand. So for example, you can specify whether you are going to be prompted for automatically retrieving the master representation. You can also control regeneration, selection, editing, and cleanup, which is the automatic removal of that additional detail from your computer session in order to improve your computer performance. All right, let's click cancel out of there and cancel out of here since we didn't actually change anything. Another thing to note about simplified reps is that you can use different rules to control them. Let's go back to that representation that we just created. And I'm going to right click and edit definition. In the dialog box here, we also have the ability to create different rules. So I'm going to edit a rule. Let's hit the plus sign to create a rule. And for the condition that I want to create, let me choose to create a new condition. I'm going to accept the default name. And so when you are creating a condition, you can use the name of the component in order to apply an action, or one that might be very convenient is to use the size. So for example, let's say I have a lot of hardware in here and I want to get rid of anything that has a size less than, I think this model's in millimeters. Let's say anything less than, there we go. Here we have 13 different items. I can click the OK button, and that way we can exclude different components based on their size, and I can add that rule into the model, and that way we are using that. And so that's how you can use rules in order to set up actions to be applied to components in your simplified representation. Let's click the Open button, and so that way we've created our simplified rep. One thing to note also is that you don't have to retrieve the master representation whenever you want to get an assembly. If you click on the Open button, when you go to grab an assembly, you can use the Open drop-down list to open one of your predefined representations, or to open up the automatic rep. You can also use Open subset to create a simplified representation on the fly. And so that's how you use simplified representations as a large assembly management tool in Creo Parametric. I hope you enjoyed this video. For more information, please visit www.creowindchill.com. If you learned something from this video, please give it a thumbs up And if you like this video, please click the subscribe button and ring the bell to be informed when new videos are uploaded. Thank you very much.